Okay, I beg your pardon for lousy slides, somewhat lousy, they're not top quality. It happened so that I had to prepare this on short notice. I was thinking about getting them done on the train, but I had to sleep on the train, so yeah. Yeah, I recently arrived, I just arrived last night. So what is my presentation going to be about? There is this notion in blockchain, a major issue of network upgrades. And so far, at this point, major upgrades are happening with forks, so through forks. Meaning that the idea is to convince all the stakeholders, all the participants of the network, that the upgrade is really necessary. It's a must-have thing. It must be done. So this conviction, they need to be convinced. The miners need to be convinced. To keep the consensus going among these miners, so that the nodes will be following the same logic, which will be non-conflicting with the logic of a different fork, of the next fork. Why are forks happening? Because the hashes don't match. The hashes of valid blocks do not match, which is when a fork happens. So that was the positive scenario, a soft fork. A soft fork, that fork happens when everyone agreed to switch to a new version. It happened more or less smoothly. A hard fork is a different story. It's an instance when there was no consensus reached for some reason. There was no agreement to go ahead with it. Mostly it's a political issue. It's mostly political. And for those reasons, Ethereum Classic, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold came around, and all the stuff mentioned here at the bottom of the slide, all the rest. So what are the properties inherent to hard forks? Well, first of all, it bloats the state. It contaminates the state. When fork happens, it contains the same state, or the same state route, the state root. There is a common block they're based on, and a common history, and a common DB. So essentially, if you want to run, or if you want to launch two nodes, for instance, two nodes on a single physical machine, then you will have to, if you're relying on Parity Ethereum, you will have to run two instances of Parity Ethereum with various chain spec. And the database will be duplicated. I mean, you're going to have a duplication of space, twice as much space consumed. The second point is it's misleading to users. It confuses the users at the time of the fork. It's very dangerous when a hard fork happens. There is a danger of how to transfer your funds, or how to keep the funds which were forked. In this scenario, you have to trust third-party software, which can be malicious, or which can be dumping your private keys in a fraudulent way to some crooks. We've seen cases like that. There have been cases like that. When the Ethereum forked into ETH to ETC, when Ethereum Classic spun off, there were cases of keys leaking or being leaked from people the people using non-verified clients or wallets. Replay attacks, there's potential likelihood of that, when the same transaction can be applied to several networks. Whereas the users would not like to have it, would not like to make it happen. Market manipulations. As soon as a fork happens, the exchanges have a motivation to add a new ticker, to add a new token to their listing. At which point, since the market volume on the less popular fork is small, and the number, whereas the number of potential market players is high and the demand is high. So this high potential demand is a result. And bottom line, you end up with a big user base that can be manipulated. I mean, you can say, like, check this out, this token is going up. And since the market volume is small, this is easily, it's easy to pull off that kind of scam. So the users start buying this stuff. The users start buying this stuff, this token in huge quantities. It further contributes the price to go up. So it's a classical hype as it is. Then you sell this token. So that's a kind of a potential scam that can happen. For those of you who are just a small 101 as to how it happens for those of you who were unaware of what forks are. As an alternative, as a better alternative for a network upgrade, atomic swap could be used. How is AES better? Atomic swap means creating a completely new greenfield network. The only thing retained from the old network is that the genesis will feature the blocks, the block headers from the previous network. All the rest is from scratch. Those older blocks are updated with the collators. Genesis plus collators means the creation of a new network that is born out of that. So ultimately, you have a block of blocks. What happens next? You pre-deploy a smart contract in the old network, which helps lock some funds, some user funds. Well, it's just a value that is further transferred or attached to a contract. Next, the users can collect the proof. They can pick up the proof from the previous gen network, from the older network, and send that proof to the new network, because the new network would be aware of the block structure of the old network. It can validate, it can verify the validity of those transactions. In which case, the money or the funds, the value will be available in the new network. What do we receive bottom line? What we get in the end is absence of share state. I mean, we can clearly see the accounts that are active, that are not, that are idle. There is no bloating, there is no pollution or contamination of the state with these dormant accounts. We're not creating additional history. We're not throwing the old garbage, old baggage on top, and so on. In this respect, there is a very interesting property. The user, or the market as the collection of users, decides which network is best for use. Which network is the best recipient for the funds? Which network is better than the other? than another. There is a liquidity mechanism there, meaning that the money can flow from one network to the other, and there won't be any cloning involved. This will give the users the ability to use the network of their choice. This schematic will be the same. The contracts can be deployed into a new network that will operate with the same MO as the older one. Only it's going to be better specs, better performance specs, and otherwise. The scalability. It's everything that we require an upgrade for. Implementation details. Essentially, this is we're arriving at the QA stage. This is a kind of an inception report from my part, because if we dig deeper into implementation details, it will take a lot of time. But if there are any specific questions, I'm prepared to take them. Collators, validators, the questions, please, if you have those questions, go ahead, fire away. Ethereum 2.0, what is that? That's still an open question. There is no such body, or there is no such agency that would delegate authority to someone to call something Ethereum 2.0, 3.0, 4,000, whatever, you name it. So any person can create a network and dub it Ethereum 2.0. The question is de facto. What is going to be Ethereum 2.0 de facto? And it doesn't come for granted that this is going to be Ethereum 2.0 that was created, for example, by the author who put Ethereum 1.0 together. And that's the intrigue. That's the intriguing bit. So I wouldn't really rely on understanding of what Ethereum 2.0 is, because it doesn't come for granted that these are the authors of Ethereum 1.0, or anyone else for that matter. It will be too early for that. The last bit from me, we've created this Telegram chat. So please, feel free to jump in. This is the Russian community of Web 3.0. We're going to be there. We're already there. We're discussing the topics of future web, of Web 3.0, how Web 3.0 is different, why Web 3.0 is needed. And what are the principles Web 3.0 must be built on? What issues are avoided? What issues are bypassed which issues are handled in Web 3.0, which are not handled in Web 2.0? Web 3.0, what is going to be there? All the matters, all the relevant aspects are discussed in that chat. Thank you very much. That's all for my part. Thank you, Alexei. Round of applause, please. Yes, especially that suspense with Ethereum 2.0. Yeah, I believe that it was very suspenseful, that one. Any questions to Alex, to Web 3.0 or Ethereum 2.0? You would like to ask something about that? Please, yeah, there's a question. Yes, thank you. Hello. My question is, if we're doing an atomic swap, and we're deploying a new SC in the new network, how does it happen? Through collators? How is it referenced from the old network? Yeah, I can tell you once again about the state of balance. Yeah, it's the entire state. For the balance, yes, you can imagine it. Well, even with the balances, is it a constant updating from the old network? Anyone. So we have a proof. There are blocks which are imported by collators. They are created, or they're working independently. They are collecting these independently. The POW, the proof of work, is a probability consensus. And accordingly, how do I put this? The collators act as oracles. Ultimately, bottom line, they're interested to reach an agreement. They're interested in reaching a consensus as to which block will be irreversible. So they add those headers on top into the status, into the state. And once the header had been appended and some transaction happened on that header, there will be a lock of funds. The user can pick up the proof of that, and they can write it as a transaction that they spent a certain amount of Ethereum in the old network. And that user will get the same amount of Ethereum in the new network after the fork. So yeah, it's user generated. Yes, it's user actuated. That's right, but the transaction is accepted by the validator ultimately. So definitely, yeah, the validation needs to be independent. The computation is happening independently. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, I don't see any further questions. Thank you, Alexei. Thank you, Parity Tech. Thank you. A round of applause, please. Great thing, great thing.